Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Meaning of the Minds webinar. We have Bill Mitchell from Microsoft talking to us about embracing complexity to optimize processes and experiences, how cities and organizations can be successful using data to drive results. We like to take a quick reading on who's joined us today, so you'll see a poll pop up asking you which sector best defines you. That helps give us and Bill a little reading on who's here today. So we'll just do a little housekeeping before Bill starts. My name is Jessie Feller-Hahn. I'm the Executive Director of Meaning of the Minds. Meaning of the Minds is a global thought leadership platform with year-round programming. Our mission is to connect global urban sustainability, innovation, and technology leaders across sectors to share best practices, tools, and solutions. We do that through our blog, cityminded.org, our monthly webinar series, pop-up events and workshops, and our big event, our annual summit. This year, our annual summit will be in the San Francisco Bay Area, October 25 to 27th, and registration opens May 2nd. So a few housekeeping notes. Because of our very large audience in attendance today, you will remain muted throughout the event. We will have a Q&A during the second half of the hour. When you have a question, please type those into the questions panel in your attendee control panel as you think of them. A PDF of today's slides will be available in the chat window in your attendee control panel, and they'll be posted on the event page on cityminded.org. We would appreciate your input regarding today's webinar, so a short survey will pop up when you close your browser at the end of the event. Today's presenter is Bill Mitchell, a Senior Director for Microsoft's Worldwide Public Sector team. Bill leads the company's worldwide public sector business development for its cities and sustainability solutions. Over the last 5 years, Bill has built an ecosystem of strategic partner relationships with software companies, universities, and government to deliver innovative and economically sustainable solutions for smart cities. During his 12 years at Microsoft, he's managed new strategic partnerships with the largest software and service companies, as well as startups in smart buildings, energy management, and product lifecycle management. In his work on city-scale solutions, he's forged strategic partnerships with Singapore Smart Nation, City of Seattle, University of California, Energy Efficiency Center, and Cubic Transportation. Prior to Microsoft, Mr. Mitchell today served in a variety of management and business development roles in software and technology. So let's look at the poll. 20% of you are from the public sector, 39% private sector, 3% philanthropy, 19% entrepreneur startup, 19% nonprofit sector. Interesting. So Bill, with all of that, take it away.
Yeah, Jessie, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for the 1 week delay that you so graciously granted, as I had to cancel last week's call rather abruptly. I'm working to move my slides forward right now, and it's working fine. I started, there we go. So if any of you were on the, I know perhaps only a small percentage of you were actually on the originally scheduled call last week, but we had an interesting IoT event disrupt our call, and you can see here our facilities team standing quizzically underneath that lighting fixture in the hallway. The conference room that I was doing this webcast from was literally next outside of this, immediately to the left of this picture. And as you can see from the CFLs in the picture below the fire engine, that those caught fire. Well, they smoked or shorted out. You can see the smudge marks inside there, and there was an acrid smell. Suffice to say, we evacuated the whole building because the alarm system was triggered. And if I had only done, we were prevented not from this high-tech IoT disruption, but from the very low-tech lack of my exiting the building with a power supply. And since I'd been running the hour or two before without plugging in my laptop, which I'm sure all of us have done at one time or another, I had about 17 minutes of power left when I was able to walk over to another building, still connected to the webcast, but unable to finish. So thank you for the reprieve. without any more explanation, we'll get into it now. So one thing you need to know about me as a business development lead in public sector is that everything I do snaps to the overall mission of Microsoft. So this is our CEO, Satya Nadella's mission statement that he shares with the company at the front end of all of his presentations. And our mission is at the core of my work is empowering every person, every organization on the planet to achieve more. A lofty goal, but one that certainly motivates and drives many of us. That ambitions area, I'm particularly focused on reinventing productivity and business process. Certainly I do that in the context of cloud mobile solutions. Those are really the only solutions that I'm interested in the work that I'm doing is that they enable so much of what I do around energy, water, and transportation. So we have an ambitious title, and I talk with colleagues at work about embracing complexity, and I didn't mean to be flippant when I made this the title of my Meeting of the Minds presentation, but I did want to get your attention and say, look, the world is increasingly complicated, and so I wanted to spend some time today to talk about how government and organizations are tackling those issues, and mainly around collecting and sharing data and engaging stakeholders in solving the problem. So we'll focus on a couple of scenarios, and you'll see a consistent theme of starting small, building community, and scaling up. That's something that I see that's very active in the work I do and in how we're thinking about business models for solutions at scale. So we'll have a couple of examples that we'll talk about specific to segments of energy, water, and transportation. But I'll start out by looking at the complexity in our own corporate environment and work that we do to be a carbon neutral enterprise. Some of you may be aware, but I think most people don't know that Microsoft is carbon neutral. And we've been running a carbon neutral company for the last 3 years. And by carbon neutral, I mean we have a neutral carbon footprint for all of our global facilities. And when you look at complexity in an organization, certainly driving the carbon footprint roll-up and the mitigation of that carbon footprint at the scale of Microsoft is certainly very challenging. And it's really a great, and for me it's an inspiring example because my colleagues, Rob Bernard is our Chief Strategist for Sustainability, and TJ DiCaprio on Rob's team, but TJ is really the driver for how do we make Microsoft carbon neutral, and how do we pull together the organization to make this work. So it really is that combination of technology, business process, and organized community. Some of the fundamentals we here are instantiated in this simple way that an initiative is communicated to an organization. So when we talk about being carbon neutral inside the company, we talk about being lean, being green, and being accountable. So these are really the high level catchwords for the business processes that we're using to drive our carbon neutral strategy. So in being lean, we're being efficient in how we consume energy. We're looking constantly at the overall load of all our facilities, our data centers, our travel, and saying, okay, how do we reduce that? So how do we make that more efficient? We'll talk a little bit later about energy efficiency and across our buildings. But once we're efficient, then the power that we are consuming, how do we turn that power green? How do we utilize renewable energy? And we've invested heavily in renewables in terms of running all our facilities, and we're in the top. I think we're at number 2 or 3 this last year in the EPA we get an award from the EPA. We've been receiving consecutive awards from the EPA based on the amount of renewable energy. We're one of the largest consumers of renewable energy in the country, one of the largest purchasers of renewable energy. And being accountable is really the key for making this happen inside the company and driving those business processes. So the way that we were able to make this carbon neutral, achieve this carbon neutral, the goal being carbon neutral, was to make the different organizations that actually are responsible for consumption of energy, whether you're a large software development team and consuming service cycles or running our facilities, being accountable is really the catch-all. And the leaders of our business groups inside the company all are accountable for their carbon footprint. It shows up on the P&L and how they run their business and how their goals. So that accountability in the organization, being able to communicate across the community, is a really important part of that. So I see this as a microcosm in some ways of how problems are solved, and we always take this learning out to the marketplace as well. So now you think of what we've done on in our own facilities to be carbon neutral. How does that scale up in terms of government? I think this is such an interesting effort. This is what you're looking at here, the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations. And the UN has worked over the last several years in a consultation and dialogue with civic leaders globally, and also including NGOs and private sector. So what you see in front of you right now are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and underneath these goals are 100, roughly 10 targets in each of these goal categories. I don't know if they break out that evenly, but there's 170 underlying associated targets with these goals. But this type of complexity is exactly what you'd imagine if you're not unlike rolling up a carbon footprint for Microsoft. Now, if you look at, okay, if I want to drive my city, regional, my government, my country in a direction that's sustainable, I'm going to have to manage, across a diverse set of, not only a diverse set of stakeholders, but a diverse set of factors that are informing decisions and making me act in terms of policy and investment. So how do you start to get your arms around this kind of problem? Well, I want to switch to, I'm going to step out of the PowerPoint for 1 second and go to this Excel sheet that I want to show you. So if we go, so now you're looking at an Excel sheet that basically captures these Sustainable Development Goals. Here's the data input. We're looking at Argentina, as you'll see here. So this is an Excel model that we built to work with our government customers and to help in general and to help in the dialogue. And in sticking with my complexity theme, this is intentionally an eye chart. I hope you can see it reasonably well. I'll walk through it a little bit. I know you're looking at a lot. At the center is this is the Gartner model for digital government maturity. So this is that continuous development model starting at the foundation level for e-government, moving all the way to smart government. I don't think anybody is operating in that category to the far right, completely smart top to bottom right now. Most are in a continuum somewhere between 2 and 4, which you can see here. Over on the left-hand side, we have these model parameters, and we've selected, you can see in the pull-down menu here, it's not responding quite as fast as I would like here. You can see the pull-down here that we have different, you can select different countries. We're in Argentina, and here you have the government, e-government level 2 to level, they're currently at level 2, going to level 4. And then you have the government and society that captures emissions, human development, broadband. So you can see all these criteria, and you can even go a little bit deeper. And this is not, this spreadsheet goes down, so I'm just showing you literally the tip of the iceberg, but now you can see how you can look at a 15-year trajectory for achieving your sustainable development goals. Here I've got the goals highlighted in purple here, concern economic growth, sustainable cities, education, and you can see the impact of investments. And I think it's really interesting to look at, how a school might avoid dropouts based on programs that they're implementing. And then across the bottom here, you have transportation, electricity, and healthcare. So monitoring and measuring is fundamental to forming a plan and staying on a path. So having the tools to monitor and measure, just like you'd monitor and measure a carbon footprint as a corporation, as a government, the complexity scales up dramatically, and you're monitoring and measuring across all the systems to try and meet your priority goals. So I wanted to give you some insight there into how you can begin to get your arms wrapped around the problem as a government authority or agency or policymaker in this discussion. So let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation here, and we'll keep moving along. So let's go a little bit. Let's touch on a couple of go from the super large down to narrow the problem down, and let's look at transportation for a few minutes here, and look at it in the context of how decisions are being made based on data, and the impact of the Internet of Things there as well. So here, this is what we're looking at here is a study that Brookings did in 2012, and we work closely with Brookings. We're partnered with them, and in this case, we supported the data analytics for looking at transit systems across major metropolitan areas and down into mid-market. I think there's some 200 transit agencies that are captured, 200 different distinct metropolitan areas and transit agencies that are covered in this particular study. It won't surprise anyone to know that the fundamental analysis in transportation, in delivering on the promise of a transportation system, is making sure that you can get people to their jobs and to fuel economic growth in your area. And this is certainly challenging as we know, where people live and where people work don't easily fit within the borders of transit districts and agencies, and the notion that you can make an easy trip across a large metropolitan area has been elusive for many, but it's changing quickly right now. I think there's a lot of interesting disruption in transportation based on how people are beginning to manage information. It really comes down at a high level from how transit authorities and stakeholders plan these systems, but also into how citizens consume them. So this vital resource that drives economic growth for a region, then how is that translated to the citizen who has to navigate a 90-minute commute, which falls inside the boundaries of what Brookings would say is might be a reasonable commute for many to get from home to work. So you look at the movement, urban mobility, to provide a seamless multimodal commute on your cell phone. You can see this emerging around you with solutions that likely many of you are using right now to check your commute. Obviously find simple things like schedules, but now also find more difficult things like ride sharing and parking. But we're on a path now where we're going to see this as a seamless interaction, and of course the assumption there under that seamless interaction is the um, the different agencies are going to work to share data so that they have visibility into each other's schedules and can make a seamless transaction happen for any given citizen, whether you start at home on your bicycle in your own personal vehicle or an Uber or Lyft or taxi and move to a transit authority and go end to end. So all of the dynamic scheduling that goes into delivering that. An easy example that you see right now happening in the San Francisco Bay Area is the Clipper card, which will help you navigate across some 25 different transit districts. So the coordination that goes into that is certainly significant, but it's certainly possible, and citizens are at the same time demanding this. There's great demand in the market. The other piece to this is how do you so assuming that you can coordinate across these systems, how do you make that system, the underlying assets of that system, more reliable? This is another very active part of the transit system business, where IoT isn't necessarily a new thing, and in many ways, the Internet of Things is led by transit agencies, where roads and rail systems have been managed with sensors and controls for easily the last 20 to 30 years. This technology has been developing there, but it's with the advent of increasingly inexpensive sensors and the ability to more easily collect the data, being able to manage these assets more efficiently is becoming a reality today. This example from Helby, which is a bus operator in the city of Helsinki, shows just a quick insight into how a local bus authority would use IoT, collecting data from the drivetrain of this bus, the engine, the braking system, and be able to capture those critical elements that tell you how that bus is performing and when it needs maintenance, essentially making it more reliable, but also providing the data that allows the operator of that bus to run it more efficiently, to know where they're going too fast, braking too heavily, causing too much wear and consuming too much fuel. So as IoT becomes more effectively deployed in this in these types of scenarios, you can see, where the transportation operator is reducing cost and fuel consumption, reducing wear and tear on equipment, and reducing maintenance costs in general because of the efficiencies built into the business process of operating this way. So it's really a lot of really interesting work that, across transportation systems, both in how they're operated and how they're maintained. So if you take this same simple diagnostics and move this over to the built infrastructure, and I love this particular example because this high school in Arlington, Massachusetts, if you look at that picture, it's not, if in your mind you say, okay, what does a smart building look like? You're probably thinking of a glass and steel high-rise, built sometime in the last 10 years, and you imagine completely digital systems running and operating that complex piece of infrastructure that's that large building. But the smart building scenario is possible in existing infrastructure. It's just a question of getting at the data. And in this case, our partner Iconics has worked with the school district in Arlington, Massachusetts, and deployed their system, which does fault detection and diagnostics across the heating, ventilation, air conditioning system, and allowed the test case in this high school in Arlington went very well, with a significant reduction in energy consumption and associated costs, both in electricity and gas, and improved maintenance by running this fault detection and diagnostics. So you can see the application can scale down and be implemented, across something as finite as a school district in a mid-sized city. The challenges in energy efficiency across the built infrastructure come from scaling up. And if you look at the city of Seattle, which is another example of a city that's very aggressively tackling energy efficiency and sustainability solutions, we were able to begin to solve the problem of what does it feel like when you scale up energy efficiency across buildings. In this particular project, Microsoft was able to work based on a grant to the City of Seattle and their Office of Economic Development, a grant from the Department of Energy, back in 2012, 2013, and through a pilot that's still running now, we partnered with Accenture and the 2030 district in Seattle. So for scaling up this project and going from handling an individual building like the case in Arlington, Massachusetts, but okay, how do you run a pilot across several million square feet across different buildings? And in this case, we had light manufacturing, we had typical large commercial high-rise, high-density residential, retail and hospitality and medical. So we really had a good cross-section of facilities. But in order for us to implement a pilot and get out and work with the city itself, the city's utilities, City Light, and get to building owners, we needed an engaged community member, and that is the 2030 district in Seattle. The 2030 district had a goal that was aligned with our goal. The 2030 district 2030 district's concise goal is to reduce energy consumption by 50% by 2030. Certainly extremely ambitious, but 2030 has really taken hold in Seattle and has literally hundreds of building owners, and they capture most of the downtown corridor in their organization. So the 2030 district was able to communicate this pilot program we were running and engage building owners, and really was the key ingredient for making this possible. So that community engagement across a broad set of stakeholders is something that we see very present in making these solutions work at scale. Here's an example of our own campus in Puget Sound, coming back to my original comment that we're trying to be as efficient as possible with our own facilities. So we're really operating a small city in the Puget Sound area with about 150 buildings, 15 million square feet, spread out over 500 acres. We consume a tremendous amount of energy with 100 megawatt peak, and roughly a $60 million annual spend with Puget Sound Energy, and we're their largest customer in their service territory. So in tackling this at scale, we found the business process that we drove to make this scenario work was really the most important part of it. The technology is the same technology that we're deploying that was deployed by our partner Iconics in that school in Arlington, Massachusetts. So we're doing fault detection diagnostics across all of the heating and ventilation systems across all our facilities, plus the other segments of that infrastructure, whether it's lighting, other mechanical systems, and how people interact with them. So we're on a path right now that's changing the business processes across how we manage our facilities. And by presenting this data to the facilities management crews, we've changed the way that we operate the maintenance on all our buildings. So by having real-time data for all the systems that provide the not only the heating and air conditioning, and at the end of that is comfort and productivity and security. So we're able to have a window on these, and we don't have time today to go through all of these dashboards, but I wanted to give you a feel for how we're pulling data from these individual buildings, providing visibility to the executive management that's in charge, in charge of making sure that we operate those facilities um, uh, efficiently and ultimately to optimize the experience for our employees and ensure that everyone is productive. The challenge is in how we roll this out internationally and how we codify that for our employees worldwide. So what's come from deploying these systems is refining how we actually go out and set these systems up across our different facilities, how we interact with the building owner in the case that we don't own the building, or the local utility. So the business process has become a fundamental part of this, and really the value that we have in addition to the technology is the playbook that lets us execute on this program really efficiently. What we've done in terms of rolling out this technology and deploying it in individual buildings is to bring that down to a very experienced, let's call it a SWAT team of 3 to 4 people that can go out and set up an individual building very quickly. So you're not necessarily in a position where you have to reteach a local team at how to do the initial setup and deployment of the system. That's just one example of where we've learned to make that happen much more quickly and efficiently. So this all fits into our ultimate goal of being carbon neutral. So another interesting evolution that's in progress right now is, okay, we know how to manage our own campus really efficiently and essentially use that as a prototype for a small city. The next scale up there, the next increase in complexity comes in the connected campus experience. And in this case, we're putting this in the context of a large university. So now, more complicated than a corporate campus, it's more open. It's not as tightly controlled, and you can look at it. And certainly, many universities are and you can probably name several that that you're aware of that are already working to deploy systems that make them more efficient or to capture data more efficiently across the campus. But this notion of a smart connected campus is really the microcosm of a city when you look at safety, security, the connected transportation, in this case connected stadium, but you can think of that as any venue it could be a stadium, it could be performing arts, the cultural tourist milieu that people move through in a city, wellness and health and health facilities, obviously buildings and energy efficiency, but now how are the people and students interacting with that? And in a lot of campus environments, obviously students have their ID card, the ID cards, which have become one and the same in terms of making transactions as they move through their typical day at school. So this I see as one of the critical next steps, and where I see tackling the built infrastructure and energy efficiency at scale. You can see how we're really moving quickly up this continuum of, if you go back several years, people were very excited about a smart building. I'd say, well, one building is a good thing, but what's really interesting is how do you tailor those systems to address all different kinds of buildings and scale up at the same time. And again, it's coordinating stakeholders and the business processes that do this are the biggest challenge. And I think universities right now are the next beachhead that's really interesting and very engaged in this discussion. So let's look at this from another point of view, and probably is scaling up still from the university level, but now focused on one system that is wastewater management. And this, in my mind, is another IoT scenario which is happening and is in by itself isn't breakthrough. The fact that the city of Breda in the Netherlands is about 175,000 people, and is, Holland, the Netherlands has a great part of their history is controlling water, right? The system of dikes, they're below sea level. This is something the country has done for a long time and does very well. But with climate change, they're also will continue to work on refining the processes they use to manage water and wastewater. In this case, the city of Breda was very interested as they were working on new infrastructure for wastewater management. They really wanted to make sure that they were collecting data from all of the systems, the pumps in particular in terms of managing energy, but across the whole system to make sure it was running efficiently. What I think is most fun about this is the way that they engage the community. Here you can see a picture of their website, and in the upper right-hand corner, some of this isn't translated. My colleagues in Holland did a nice job of providing this orange band that basically says what we have here is a water treatment plant that is very much a part of the city of Breda. You can see a residential development not far from this reclamation pond. So they're proud of the work that they're doing. The infrastructure is integrated into the community, but it's the outreach to the schools and the students, the children that are getting an education in the city. And what you're seeing here is what I carry it in my briefcase. Is one of my favorite things. This is what a sensor looks like now, and this is a simple sensor that kids can take home from school and flush down their toilet and follow sensor. This is the front and back of the sensor, sensor number 1182, and follow that sensor as it makes its journey through the sewage system in Breda. So I thought it was a very clever and interesting way to engage the community in something that may not be as interesting like a wastewater project. So I just love that scenario for its creativity and lightheartedness. But now if you take that, and now we talk about scaling up to the scale of the city of Chicago. Chicago is roughly 3 million people. The metropolitan area in general is closer to 9. We already talked about transit systems and integration across those systems. And so we know the challenges, when the city boundaries don't necessarily end neatly. And that's true in wastewater, transportation, and energy to a degree. So we've partnered with an organization. This is, again, community organization making this happen. City Digital is a new organization that we're very excited about and partnered with. City Digital is part of a bigger nonprofit organization in Chicago called UI Labs. They also are working on digital manufacturing scenarios. But in this case, City Digital is focused on partnerships for solutions that address physical infrastructure, energy management, transportation, and water and sanitation. So this is a way for Microsoft and partners like Siemens, Accenture, the utility ComEd, Tyco, and many other partners to engage in a test bed environment and work closely with partners and closely with the city to understand how to develop solutions that address problems. And City Digital works to prioritize critical areas from the city's perspective, and works with the partners in terms of managing that collaboration to track us together in teams to work on innovative solutions together, innovative solutions that address the problems. So this is a good a way for us to scale up. And so if you think about where they fit, and in this chart on the left hand, you have, a typical scenario where government universities are operating, solving problems, perhaps doing research, but aren't connecting as well as they might. Maybe connecting serendipitously through connections that researchers might have with private sector. Certainly, private sector and academia have been engaged a lot, but City Digital is working very intentionally to close this gap. And their organization uh, sits between the government and academic institutions, and in this case in Chicago where they're active, and private sector partners that they can bring to bear on the solution. So the real benefits for this, how their mission, really they're a broker for these industry, university, and civic partnerships. They help as a manager and almost think of them as a curator for complex R&D and training partnerships. So leveraging what's coming on the university, being able to engage that in a nearer term discussion with industry, so both are able to leverage each other. Net result is a positive economic development engine where companies like Microsoft can engage a city like Chicago and really understand the solution. Interesting insights and new dialogue between researchers both in academia and on the corporate side to help drive innovation, and I think compelling from Chicago's point of view because it engages these companies in a dialogue around problems that they're having, and just having that community dialogue active tends to motivate both sides of the equation. And just to show you that there's real projects that are coming out of this right now. Chicago also has a wastewater project coming, kind of tying this back into Breda at small scale, large scale, what Chicago has been experiencing, especially with the climate change and the way it has. They have more intense rain than they used to, and they have storms that can often overwhelm the infrastructure. And I realize I'm almost out of time right now, but in this particular scenario, you have an infrastructure that you wouldn't necessarily think of as being an IoT type of infrastructure, permeable pavers, drainage systems that collect runoff, but all of the way that wastewater is gated, moved through that system is all monitored and measured. The flip side of this is work that we're doing with California and UC Davis, and I'm sorry to cut this short here. This is also really interesting in terms of managing water as a scarce resource, and looking across a diverse sets of data that the University of California is able to collect with its water utility partners, and looking at both embedded energy in water that's consumed and how do you track things by analyzing the data around leak detection and maintenance, and even predicting pipe bursts in the future. So with that, having consumed a few minutes more than I intended, and sorry to race to the end there, I'll give us a chance for some questions.
Yes, thanks so much, Joe. We'll move to Q&A. We have a bunch of questions already, so as you think of them, you can type them into the question panel in the right-hand control panel, and we'll ask Bill a few questions. So since you just were discussing City Digital, we have a question about that, Bill.
Sure.
And Ravi's wondering whether City Digital is ready to take up the work in India and one of the proposed smart cities selected by the government of India, or if there's any, if you guys are working at all in Indian cities and have any insight into that.
Yes. So the City Digital model, I know. So working Chicago's interesting because it's a large city, and they're working to tackle the problem at scale. And indeed, um, we believe, and I know City Digital believes that their model is applicable, not just it's not just a U.S. based model, but they're thinking very intentionally about this model from an international point of view. So um, going back to the UN's, the 17 different sustainable development goals, the world's a diverse place, and certainly attributes of there's things about Chicago that are in common, and you're solving the same problem, and then things about other parts of the world less developed, and I'm thinking in parts of, I'm thinking specifically about India now, and cities there, and the challenges that exist that might be slightly that will definitely be different than the challenges in Chicago. The technology, this is a good place where I'd argue that the technology is the same. It's the business process and navigating local policy that is more challenging. And we have, if you remember from the our facilities deployment map that I showed a few minutes ago, we have a number of facilities and a large number of employees in India, and we are active in smart cities discussions there. I'm not in the middle of any of those discussions right now, but I have colleagues that are tracking that. And if there's
Great.
specific follow-up on that, you can email me at billm@microsoft.com, which is where we started. I can go back to the beginning of that.
Thanks, Bill. Great.
Sure.
This question came in when you were discussing, I think, the Seattle work with building owners. Jane wants to know if data privacy has been an issue with those private building owners.
Yes. In fact, we didn't get it to, we could do in fact, this is a good future Meeting the Minds webinar, and I'm sure you've tackled this and a number of others, but security and privacy of data is a some people view it as a challenge, others view it as an opportunity. And in my business, I would say it's really an opportunity, and the technology exists now accompanied with business process to ensure the security and privacy of data that you're sharing. And I would call this the development of a trusted platform for data, and that's fundamental to work that Microsoft is doing. And I would offer that your data is more secure and is better managed in a cloud-based scenario than it is in an on-premise scenario. What you do need to ensure is confidence in the stakeholders who are sharing data, that their data will be handled correctly, and that the data, parts of the data that are encrypted and committed to being anonymous will remain anonymous even as you interact with that data and drive analytics. It wasn't a particular issue in Seattle because we did not share granular data across different stakeholders. We started that project 3 or 4 years ago, and we were more interested in trying to in driving the energy reduction and then sharing aggregated results on that. But I'm confident that now that any pilot would have this notion of being able to anonymize and have trusted data as part of a pilot, and we think and talk about that in the context of Chicago right now and the work we're doing with City Digital.
Great, perfect. We have a few questions about. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, that's also very much part of the scenario with the University of California at Davis, where they're aggregating data from different water utilities in California, and and looking specifically at how conservation programs are working for different utilities.
Great, perfect. And we'll get to another water question next. Just want to address two questions about the recording of the webinar and the slides. Both of those will be available on our website, cityminded.org, at the event page for the webinar. We'll post that event on our homepage as well, so you can find that easily and share that with colleagues that missed today. We have a question from LA, from Lawrence. He says, LA is a city with a peculiar challenge, a water retention in times of drought. Rain is scarce, but when it does rain, the stormwater system sends millions of gallons directly into the LA River and out to the ocean. Can IoT have a role in smarter stormwater systems that would address this wastage? Given that your work with UC Davis, maybe you didn't get into enough. Bill, do you have any thoughts about IoT solving some of this stormwater runoff problem we have?
Sure. Yeah, I think and I need to qualify this by saying I am not a subject matter expert or a civil engineer, but I spend a lot of time with those people. And
well, that qualifies you. Yeah, great.
But I think, so I think that case that you described in Los Angeles is a challenging one, because what you have is a physical infrastructure that's doing what it was designed to do, and that is to take that water which people didn't think they would want or need and send it into the ocean. So you have the short answer is yes, IoT can be applied to the systems in terms of understanding, by controlling how water moves through any given set of infrastructure, pipes, valves, etc. So IoT, it's not a technology issue as much as it's a policy issue and investment in physical infrastructure. There's a challenge there. I'm confident that California, I'm one of those bullish Californians who's confident that we'll solve the water problem, and it will be a combination of restructuring the physical infrastructure in a way that we can capture things like runoff and manage the water resources that we do have more efficiently, which we have a tremendous opportunity to that, and the notion that we'll be recycling water, I think, is very real. I think Singapore is a great example right now of I think it's a city-state leading in showing how water can be recycled and recycled to its purest form. And you can take what would be wastewater and turn it back into drinking water.
Yeah, good, great. Yeah, and at Meeting of the Minds, we actually converted through NASA technology and water at Meeting of the Minds at our summit in October. We used black water and turned it into beer, which we drank at the reception.
That was a great presentation from Singapore. Yeah.
Yeah. So Matt Gardner has a question, Bill, for you. He's wondering, do you think we should encourage our planning and regional agencies? I think this question came up when you showed the Brookings map on
Right.
transit and jobs. Should we encourage our planning and regional agencies to consider deeper economic incentives and interventions to encourage commercial real estate development where the transit corridors are strained? Any of the mega regions have similar issues, but our governments in the Bay Area have not traditionally been willing to intervene at this level. The Bay Area commute pattern now stretches to Tracy, Stockton, Sacramento is a great example of this problem. Any thoughts about smart city solutions for our regional traffic problems?
Wow. I would defer to a partner, like, for example, we partnered with Cubic, and as I mentioned, they're multimodal. Accenture also does. I do work with Accenture. They also are working on solutions in this area. But I think the holistic management of transportation is exactly where we're headed. Um, I gave a simple example of having a seamless data-driven point of view on your personal commute, no matter how many modes of transportation you cross, or from point A to point B. Um, but it's complicated, and it's certainly an integration of policy and um, policy, business process, and technology. I think in that order. Um, I think economic incentives are that would fall in that policy category, and I know that there's models out there where development and with regard to density, and think of this particularly in regard to parking and dense city streets where development needs to accommodate the additional capacity. That's a traditional model, but solving that more creatively or making those economic incentives stronger could change behavior. But I think it's more of a political discussion than a technology discussion.
Yeah, good. Yeah, we have a question about data transparency and sharing of data. So I'm going to rephrase the question a little bit, but Noah's wondering, why would an institution who sets a pretty, say a carbon goal not want to share their data? And my question to you, Bill, in that regard is, you've been working in the water and energy space a lot, obviously, and then you're obviously interacting with a lot of utilities. Utilities seem to be pretty shy of, well, it's also data ownership and privacy issue, but shy of sharing and being transparent about data. So how have you guys at Microsoft got around that with partnering with partners in all these projects you mentioned today?
It sounds what's the word? It sounds, I want to say it's touchy-feely, right? Or it's the soft side of it is, but it's the very real side of that is building trust, right? So
Yeah.
that sharing data, you have to trust, those are trusted parties that are sharing data. Now, trust in a business context, I mean, you can validate trust by sharing business process and technology and platform. So you can codify how you're going to trust each other in sharing this data, and you can come to agreements on how you're going to share data and how you will protect the data that you're doing a given analysis on. So there's a way to manage that trust, but I will take a step back from that and go up a little bit and say, you know what, I wouldn't label the utility industry anymore as necessarily being reluctant to share data. I think it's really generalizing because the utility business is huge and diverse. But I have a lot of conversations in cities as big as Chicago and much smaller municipalities, especially around water, which is much more fragmented than electricity. I think the typical person in utility knows they can see the world's changing, and they know that there's value in data and value in driving in sharing data and driving data analytics that inform them and how to optimize their system and to essentially get more for their investment in the current infrastructure, because money is scarce in public sector, and it's difficult to invest in infrastructure. Sometimes having the data that helps inform you on the best way to invest that infrastructure, and I'm thinking specifically about water and replacing infrastructure that's old and or leaking, and letting the data help inform you on that. So
Great.
sharing data with researchers is less threatening. Sharing data with other utilities is also a really good idea, so that you can more easily share best practices and gain insights from utilities that are facing similar problems to yours, based on their infrastructure, and you can discern that from the data that you have. So my short answer is trust is essential, but at the same time, I think the opinion is changing, and data is more readily shared now than it was just a short time ago, 3 to 5 years ago.
Yeah.
People realize
Good.
there's value.
Good. Thank you. Well, and you touched on so many amazing topics that we will be continuing the conversation around at Meeting the Minds 2016 in October. You mentioned Cubic. Cubic executives will be at Meeting the Minds talking about their transportation and transit mobility solutions. You've mentioned your work with working with utilities. We're also going to be talking about how how utilities are being disrupted and how that sector and that space is changing around energy, clean energy solutions, renewables, and data, and the kind of entrepreneurial ecosystem that's kind of disrupting the relationship between customer and utility. So, yes, that'll have to conclude our webinar for today. We're out of time. We're 1 minute over, but a short survey will pop up when you guys close your browser. We really appreciate your feedback, and we'll hope to see you at next month's webinar. Visit our blog, cityminded.org. Again, our annual summit will be October 25, 26, 27 in the San Francisco Bay Area in Richmond, California. Registration for that opens May 2nd. And you'll find more information on all our events and resources at cityminded.org, our website. And that's it. Have a great day. Again, thanks so much, Bill, for your time and for surviving the fire so you could be here this week.
Thank you for thanks to Meeting the Minds, and I really appreciate being able to tell the story and let me stretch the limits of what would be a typical presentation. So it was a lot of fun. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.